Hello and welcome to the Student Hub Live event for primary studies. Well, I'm afraid we're a little bit late today and I am very sorry. Someone's put our computer technology in the wash or something and it's not working quite as we'd expected. However, we're on our live stream account, so you can still chat and tell us what you're thinking if you would like to do so. My name's Karen Foley and I'll be presenting the next 2 hours of content which we have from primary studies. We've got a great lineup to support you in your studies and talk about some of the key issues that you will be beginning to get to grips with as you progress. So this event is a live interactive event, and what makes it really unique is that you have the chance to talk and ask questions in our chat box. Now on the live stream this can sometimes be a little bit hidden, but you can open it up and see where the comments are, and HJ is there talking to people in the chat and he's going to take on board our questions and put those to our panellists in the studio. HJ, how's it all working then on the live stream? It's a little bit different, isn't it?
Yes, it's slightly different. You may need a live stream account, but I can see that Paige has joined us quite well and she's excited, ready to go. And we've got other people popping in. So do use the chat box for your thoughts, comments, questions, and we'll put it to our guests in the studio. Remember, you can use our Twitter as well. So I'm watching Twitter as well while we're doing this event at Student Hub Live. So if you can't post on live stream, post on our Twitter and we'll make sure to put all your thoughts and questions to our lovely guests who are joining us today.
Excellent, thanks. So how does it work then? Do you have to open a side box on the live stream? Because I can see you've got a lovely panel of chat here, but when I logged on the live stream the other day, there was just the video.
Yes, well, if you look to your right-hand side, there's a little speech bubble. If you click on that, then you'll get all the chat box up and you can see what's going on and posting it yourself as well. So remember, just to press that button. And as I said, any troubles, then you can hop over Twitter as well, or email us, studenthub@open.ac.uk.
Thank you very much. Lovely. Well, tell us what you're studying, what level you're at, and maybe where you are in the country right now. But let me tell you what we have in store for you today. So first I have Eyres, who's going to give us an outline to the session and a broad overview of the qualification. We're then going to talk to Linda Cully about supporting disability, because disability and diversity are key themes within today's programme. Then Cherry Day will be giving us a student perspective from the Open University Students Association. And then Kim Walker is going to be talking to us about diversity in primary. Then Jill is going to give us an AL, tutor perspective, and then we're going to play you a video about a student stories project that John Parry and Kim Walker are taking part in. So a very, very good lineup in store for you today. But Ian, thank you for joining us, and you're going to give us an introduction to the qualification. Now you're a senior lecturer in primary education and you've worked as a teacher and a researcher and a writer since the 1970s. So can you give us a sort of brief history of your experience of primary education at the OU?
Right, okay. Yeah, it goes back a long way. I started when the OU had a primary teacher training programme, the PGCE, in the closing years of the 20th century. And a lot of the current module material, not directly, but it owes a debt to that teacher training stuff. And the first substantive outcome of that was a module, or course as we called them in those days, for teaching assistants, which we called STAC, which stood for Specialist Teacher Assistant Certificate. And that was very much modelled on teacher training, but it was focused on the needs of teaching assistants. And it gave them an introduction to good practice as teaching assistants. So it looked at the ways schools work, it looked at principles of teaching and learning, some of the theoretical underpinning of teaching and learning and how to support students, and core subject knowledge in areas of English and maths and science. And a lot of that underpins the content of the newly developed degree in primary education.
So what do the degrees look like now then?
Well, is it time for me to turn to my diagram?
You can turn to the diagram when you like. I think it's a fabulous diagram and very helpful actually for students to see the different levels. Okay,
well, we now have an honours degree, which means we're operating on 3 levels. And it begins with 2 level 1 modules, one is learning and teaching in the primary years, and that's very much the air of the tradition of STACK, if you like. It still covers the basic things that people working in primary schools and wanting to understand primary education need to know. So it looks at those basic subject areas, it looks at how schools work, it looks at the curriculum, it looks at effective ways of teaching and learning, what are the best ways of speaking to children, that's that sort of thing. And then alongside it, at level 1, there's an introduction to childhood studies and child psychology, which is a more theoretical module. It's a more academic module in that it doesn't have so much of a practice focus. But it is very, I think the title is well chosen, Childhood Studies and Child Psychology, because there's a tendency to look at child psychology as a kind of, almost robotics, what's the mechanism that goes on in children to make them work and understand and learn. But this very much contextualises children's learning in their culture, their society, all kinds of different things like that, which really contextualise and look at children as people, not simply as some sort of learning mechanism.
And then we move over to level 2, where there's a lot more choice.
Yeah. Well, there is some choice. Well, yeah, given that,
depending, I guess, on which pathway. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a core module in level 2, which is developing subject knowledge for the primary years. That began actually back to history. That began as the training that we did in subject knowledge for primary teacher trainees. And that developed in the first early years foundation degree as a standalone subject knowledge course, and it's evolved in different ways since then. But that is now focusing on the kind of knowledge that people need if they're thinking of becoming primary teachers, and it's the sort of thing which teacher training institutions look for in people who are applying to become primary teachers. So it focuses on English or language, maths, science, and ICT, and it gives students a grounding in the knowledge that they need to have in order to understand what children are doing in primary schools and in order to support them properly. And it very much contextualises that knowledge. So it looks at not just here's what you need to know as someone supporting learners, but how do children make sense of it and what's the context needed. So that's E209. And then, as you say, there is some choice.
So these are both 60 credits,
That's right.
obviously. So 2 at level 1, E209, 60 credits, and then you get this choice, as you say.
That's right, yes. So, all modules are 60 points. And yes, there's at level 2, there is a choice between a module on childhood, which is very much in keeping with the childhood studies and child psychology module at level 1. There's a module on equality and inclusion, which has kind of links in its heritage to the more practice-based modules. And then there's a module which is a bit of a departure, really, because the age range is 0 to 18, which is about working with children and young people. So there are those 3 choices.
Wonderful. Then you get to level 3, where there is, again, no choice.
No choice whatsoever. That's right, yes. You whoop it up at level 2.
But to some extent, having some optionality is a really nice thing. But equally, like anyone with a big menu, sometimes too much choice isn't a good thing. And there is an awful lot that's packed into these. And again, you can sort of see by the titles that they are quite broad to give a good undergraduate understanding.
That's true, yes. So, at level 3, the bottom right-hand rectangle on the diagram is the module we expect students to do last, which is issues in research with children and young people, which is an introduction to doing research. And it's divided between looking theoretically approaches to research, looking at case studies and so on, and then equipping students to do their own research. And obviously the assessment on that module is substantively their own piece of research. And the other module at level 3 is one that I'm currently involved in. And it's an exciting module. I think it brings together an awful lot of things that people within the School of Education are doing. And it's focused on comparative studies in primary education. So I don't know if students know, but we do an awful lot of work around the world. A lot of the people who are working on this team have worked in countries in Asia, Africa, South America, all over, and are drawing on that expertise to look at some fundamental questions about education, but looking at them from the point of view of how they manifest themselves in different countries around the world, so that students are able then to draw their conclusions about what are those fundamentals.
Now, who are the students who might be studying? Because you can see obviously that people would be learning a lot about children and childhood studies, psychology, etc., often with a view to working in this sort of setting, and also then leading students to maybe postgraduate research as well. But who are the students that you would say are in your current cohort of primary studies students?
That's
You describe them, then I'm going to ask HJ to tell us who's in the chat.
Yeah, that will be interesting to know, because the thing that we do know is that things are changing.
Yeah.
And this actually, when I thought about who our students are, that was what made me first think, well, I want to say something about the history. Yeah. Because our original students studying primary education were teaching assistants. Yeah. Our student body was entirely people working in schools alongside students. And there was a lot of interest in those early days from, it was the Department for Education in those days, because they saw this as a way of boosting teacher numbers, because people would follow this course, they thought, and go into teaching. In fact, at the time, what we found was that the majority of our students didn't want to be teachers. They just wanted to be better at what they did. But that's something which has changed over time, and I think we have many more of our students now who do aspire to be teachers, and it'll be interesting to see what people who are actually listening now have got to say about that.
Well, who is here today?
We've got quite a few people starting off and have done a few modules. So Vicky's starting off with E103. We've got Paige in the chat, Tom, Candice, everyone's saying hello. So hello, it's good to see you. Any thoughts, comments and questions as always. We have a really good one from Candice though, saying it looks a bit scary having to choose between different modules and pathways. So do you have any advice perhaps on what to choose, or maybe the modules at level 1 may give an idea or a sense of what you might want to go into?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd say is that there isn't actually that much choice. There's only one part of the framework where you do have to make a choice. And I think by the time students get that far, they'll have a good, because the level 1 modules are very wide-ranging, and you'll begin to see what are the things that you're interested in. And some of it will be down to what your academic study has been so far, and some of it will be down to what your personal experience is. If you're a youth worker, you're likely to want to be working on the making a difference with children and young people, because that stretches up into that age band. But I mean, I don't think by the time students get to that point when they're making a choice, they're going to have very much difficulty, to be honest. It'll be, I mean, I would think the only difficulty is going to be seeing 2 things or 3 things that you really want to do and having to narrow it down to one.
And we heard earlier today about how the student support team can help with that.
Yes. So all the student support teams, it was good that we chatted earlier, because Zach is really friendly. I'm sure everyone just wants to ring up the student support teams just to chat to Zach. But he said earlier that you can call them up, ask any questions about pathways, module choice, Tutor's always a good source as well, because they'll
And
be
there
aware
are
of
some
all
reviews
the modules.
on some of the websites as well from other students, which can be really helpful.
And all the information about TMAs and what you'll be studying, which is really good. I'm sure Candice finds that quite reassuring. Lucy is studying E102 and E103 at the same time, so she's doing a full-time year. And Hazel's just saying, and Paige, they're both aspiring to be primary teachers after doing this degree as well. So that's really good. Glad to hear that.
Well, thank you for chatting. And if you've just joined us and you haven't seen the chat tab, just click on the little speech bubble on the right-hand side of your live stream screen and you should be able to talk to us there. So Ian, tell us briefly then, how does the learning work? I mean, we can't obviously cover comprehensively all of this, but broadly speaking, for our new students out there, what do they need to know about things like TMAs, tutor marked assignments, and finding their assessment early on?
Right, okay. I mean, the first thing I'd say is talk to your tutor, because they're the person who will know all the things that you need to know about your assignments. And you'll be scaffolded quite robustly into your first TMA. Once you've done your first TMA, I think you will see it will all fall into place.
Now, many students haven't been allocated their tutorlet, so don't worry if you haven't. That will all come into play over the next few weeks, and you'll have all of your learning events, tutorials and various things popping up on your student homepage in the not too distant future. Ian, we don't have much time because we're a little bit late today, but I wonder if you could end by telling us about diversity in the programme, which is the key theme of discussion today, and why that is so theoretically important.
Right, okay. It's first of all, diversity is everywhere in the whole module structure, in the whole degree structure. Almost, well, yes, almost all, because the research one is a bit more open. But all the other modules have got very specific focuses on diversity, and often focusing on children learning in a diverse context, in a diverse world. And lots of, in the practice-focused modules have got a lot about how to support different kinds of children in different ways. But there's also a very strong socio-cultural approach which puts the learner at the centre of learning. And so the first thing that you need to do if you're supporting learning is understand where that child is coming from. And so for that reason, understanding every child's background, context, heritage is really important. And you'll find it loud and clear in all of the modules.
Excellent. Well, Ian Eyres, that's been a very brief but comprehensive overview. You've given us a really clear indication of the qualification structure and also allayed fears about where the optionality and choice are, really encouraging students, I guess, to make that decision based on their first 2 years of study, which is a long time to get to grips with some of the things that may be of more or less interest to them. So don't worry, there's a long time to make your mind up, but as we've said, there are various ways that you can find out about which of the options are right for you as you progress through your qualification. Ian, thank you very much for your time today. We're now going to have a very short video break where I'm going to show you one of the buildings on campus, and this one is the Jenny Lee building, and then we're going to be talking about supporting disability with Linda Cully. So I'll see you in a minute. Stay with us.